What's going on YouTube? What's him here again with another Forza tuning video. Crazy, I know. And today we have a car that we've seen before. It's the Honda NSX 2005 model. And for those of you out there who are more eagle-eyed and are critiquing the current pictures, you may notice that this is different straight away. If you haven't noticed it yet, the difference is it has no aero of any description. This is something that I try to do with a lot of the cars I tune. I try with and without aero just to see what they can do. You know, without aero generally means more top speed and probably more of a power tune. I mean, that has been an exception in some cases. My AMC Javelin, for example, I've got both an aero and the non-aero setup with that. And for any of you who've seen the video for the non-aero setup, it's pretty damn good, even without aero. So there are some cars that get away with it. I think this is one, but only for certain tracks. I wouldn't recommend using this car around short, tight tracks that need downforce. So with all that being said, let's have a look at what I did and see why I think it is so good. Okay, so straight away, as always, let's go and have a look at the engine. It's the standard engine. It's predominantly the same parts from the previous tune that I showed for this car a couple of months back, for the full aero tune that I use around Prague. So we've got the standard engine in this. It's obviously still the same drivetrain, still rear wheel drive, and we have the positive displacement supercharger, the bigger one, the one that packs a little bit more torque, but also kind of kills your PI more. And interestingly, the only reason this is on is because of a fault in the game. I actually, the first time I bought this car, I downloaded a friend's tune because he wanted to show me how good it was. So I downloaded my friend's tune, and you can't, when you download a previous tune, you can't leave on the centrifugal supercharger. As you can see here, I will select it. There we go, it's now selected, 677. I'll go out of this. We're back to 700 again. It's a fault in the game. It's something that I've brought up before, and I don't know why it hasn't been fixed. It's been a problem on previous Forzas, but I don't know why they haven't fixed it. It's just, I don't know, laziness perhaps, I don't know, I'm not sure. But anyway, we've got the positive displacement supercharger on that. And as I said, aero-wise, none on the front and none on the rear. Tyres, we have the street tyre compound. 245s on the front, so that's the medium setting. And maximum on the rear, 315s. So plenty of grip, plenty of rubber. Hopefully doing what the downforce isn't going to give us. And I can see we have the heaviest wheels, again for PI reasons. They haven't been made bigger on the front and are standard on the back also. Now we have a stock clutch, a stock transmission, a race driveline, and of course a race diff. Now I'm pretty much, well, I'm 90% certain that most people out there who've seen my videos can guess what we've got on here. Yep, that's race brakes, race springs and dampers. Yep, there's an anti-roll bar on the front, there's a race one as well. Yep, and there's one on the rear. Crazy. But there isn't a roll cage. Oh, controversial. Not. And all the weight's been taken out. Who would have guessed that? Now, engine-wise, no air filter, stock air filter in, I should say. We have a race fuel system, stock ignition, race exhaust, stock camshaft, stock valves, race engine block, stock pistons, race supercharger, so that's the third stage setup for that, so that's the most powerful supercharger you can get. We like power. Race intercooler. Again, that adds weight, but it does actually give you a really good amount of power. I mean, if you're looking for a lightweight tune, I wouldn't ever put a supercharger on, but this I'm not really bothered about the weight of it. I just wanted to stick the most power in it. I think it actually weighs 2,504. That's reasonably light, so it's not really an issue. I mean, it adds a significant amount of weight. It adds like what, about 87 pounds? No, sorry, 77 pounds. Excuse my maths. So yeah. We have stock oil and cooling and a stock flywheel. Now let's have a look at the numbers. We have 28 psi front and rear for these tyres. That, you know, as I always say with stock or street tyres, 28 or 28.5, depending on the chassis, depending on how the car handles it. Actually, depending on if it's rear-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, also makes a big difference. But that's usually where you want to be around. Maybe on rare occasions on cars that really shred their tyres, you might want to go down to 27.5, but this is okay. Stock gearing, of course, because it's a stock gearbox, but that's a pretty smooth setup, as you can see there on the graph. It looks nice. Right, now wheel alignment. We have minus 2.4 on the front for camber, minus 2 on the rear, giving us a bit more direct turning on the front, but still enough responsiveness on the rear to leave it feeling not like it's going to really oversteer too much. Toe, we've got 0.1 on the front and minus 0.2 on the rear. As I said in my previous video, I'm trying to avoid putting any toe on the front at all, but with this, it just really helped it. I find that when you put toe on now, on a lot of my tunes, that it really doesn't help the braking into a corner. It almost seems like ABS is on in a way, because the braking isn't as instant, and if you try and push it a bit too far, you just lock up. So that's mainly the only reason why I'm leaving the toe off, and I'm trying to come up with ways of just making without toe, like doing without it completely. On the front, that is. On the rear, you kind of need it here and there. But with this one, I don't know, it just seemed better. It seemed to work out a treat for it, much like my Chevy Bel Air tune. That's got quite a lot of toe on it. Really works well for that car. Works okay for this as well. So, you know, some do, some don't. That's the beauty of the game. They're all a bit different. And on the rear, we've got minus 0.2, as I said. That's just to keep the rear more stable, keep it in line, not have the oversteer issues that a car with no downforce on the rear could have, and mid-engined as well, so there's a lot of weight in that rear end. And we've got the caster set to 6.2. That just seems like a nice balance for this one. Again, a lot of weight in the rear. I think it's just 43% front weight bias. That is an extreme setup in terms of weight. That's 57% of the rear. I mean, that's an awful lot of weight in that rear. It swings around. It's almost like a Porsche 911 sort of weight differential. That's crazy, but it works quite well. Anti-roll bar is quite soft, this one. 12.51 on the front and 11.11, or should I say 11.11 to be grammatically correct, or mathematically correct even. Yeah, softer setup because it's more responsive. Without the aero on as well, you don't have as much stability through the corners, so you need those wheels to be more responsive, more pliable through the corners, be able to react to bumps and such. And that's why we've got the softer setup. Springs, we've got set to 540.7 on the front and 708.6 on the rear. Now again, this is using the same calculation as usual. You take the weight of the car, times that by 0. Whatever the front weight bias is, so in this case it's 43, so 0.43, and then divide that by 2, and you will get a number around 540.7. I checked it just before I did this video just to make sure of that, and it comes out, I think it's a 538 point something, so I've slightly stiffened it at the front, like not even as much as you're going to notice. I don't really know why I did it. I did that a while ago, but that's where it is. And it's the same for the rear, so you take the remaining weight percentage and do the same equation again. So it's the weight of the car times 0.57 in this case, divide that by 2, and that will give you a number around 708.6. And again, I think I've slightly softened this. I think it came out at like 712 or 711, I'm not sure, something like that, but I slightly lessened it, maybe even 713. But I slightly lessened that. Again, I'm not sure why. I think probably maybe just to give myself some slight security, think, oh yeah, that rear is a little bit softer now. That's not going to make a huge amount of difference. But I don't know, it apparently did in my head when I did this at the time. Ride height got set to 4.2 and 4.1. Rebound stiffness. Interesting settings these. So we've got 8.2 and 8.7, both front and rear for rebound. Now again, as I said before, I think in a lot of cases your rebound stiffness is dictated by how the car's weight is distributed. So with this being heavily weighted towards the rear, in most cases I think you need more rebound on the rear, like we've got here, so it's 8.7. And the ratio of 5 between them worked quite well. I don't know if it's the perfect ratio between them. Sorry, the ratio of 0.5, I should say, not 5. It worked quite well for me. I don't know if it's perfect. It suits my driving style. This thing can get a little bit out of shape if you are silly with it. If you just boot it out of a corner, like with any car, you're going to probably lose the rear end. It's really stable to a point, but if you go beyond that point, this thing's going to kill you. I mean, I know people play with different setups in terms of what their assists are and what their what driving aids they have. I race with simulation steering, and I know that if I push this too far, I'm just going to end up, you know, overcorrecting it and then overcorrecting it again, get fishtailing down the road, and I'm just going to end up in a wall that we've wrecked, and not with that. If you play with normal steering, obviously you're going to get a bit more license. You're going to get a bit more freedom to just literally plant it and do whatever you want with it. It's not going to punish you quite so much. You're going to have the opportunity to correct these things. So in that case, you may be better off just slamming it through corners, and you may think this is the best thing ever, and downforce doesn't need to happen at all. But, you know, if that's the way the game is, that's the way people play it, that's fine. As I say, that's the ratio I've come up with. I think it's okay at the moment. As I said, with all my tunes, I always go back to them and try and improve them over and over and over again. But where I am right now, I'm quite happy with that. And in terms of bump, we've got 6.0 on the front and 2.9 on the rear. Now, that's quite a large differential between those two, quite a different in ratio there. At the front, I added the 6 because I think the front needed more responsiveness. I thought it was just a bit too understeery. This adds stability, it adds better posture for the car through a corner. It gives it a much better stability through a corner. And on the rear, that's just to stop the rear from being so leery. When I originally started, I think I had them both similarly, like around sort of maybe 6 each, maybe 6.2 each, something like that. And the rear was just, it was drivable to a point, but then as soon as you went over that point, it was very uncontrollable and extremely silly. So we took that down to about 2.9 where I am now. Again, I think that works okay for me right now. Whether that's okay for you, I don't know. You have to try it out and see what you like. But personally, I'm loving that. As we can see, no downforce. Now, brakes. I've changed my brakes. Some people may say, hallelujah, he's changed his brakes, because I know I've been getting a lot of feedback from people and friends and people who use my tunes who say, oh, your brakes suck. Okay, I will admit that in certain races, in real close races, my previous brake setup was not ideal, because you couldn't brake quite as late as needed to against really, really competitive people. So I have joined the dark side, so to speak, and I've changed the way I do it. So now, with this setup, it's set to 51% towards the front, and we have a pressure of 140%. Now, I like it. I think it's okay. This is again something I'm doing new, completely different. So I'm a novice at changing the way my brakes are done, but I really like where that is right now. I think I can. For those of you who use the braking line, for example, you can go beyond the braking line. I wouldn't say significantly, but quite a bit here. If it tells you to brake, you can wait a second or two to brake. You're gonna brake hard, but if you brake and shift down the right way, you can easily brake later than the braking line tells you, and you can make the corner no problem and hit the apex no problem. So you can pick up a couple of hundredths of a second in those places. So it's better for that. I still like my old setup for certain cars. I will admit with this car it was an issue because the rear end was very squirrely under braking, and that's kind of where I caved on this. I thought, okay, I can't do this. In a race, this is just going to be a bit silly. I'm going to be worrying about braking into a corner too much, not worrying about what's in front of me or what's next to me or what's behind me, and I'll just cause an accident and it won't be good, and I'll look an idiot. And if I'm streaming as well, people will just think, oh, this guy sucks. So, you know, this kind of setup is more easy to use, I suppose. It's simpler, it's better, and yeah, that's that. So I give in. I'm sorry. I've misled people apparently for a long while. And my diff is set to 64% and 44%. Again, that's changed. I'm changing my diff quite a lot depending on what the car is now, because it mainly changes to this sort of ratio now. Like back in the day, shall we say, a couple of months ago, most of my tunes, you know, it was up here, around here, sort of thing, for both front and for both acceleration, deceleration. Sorry, and that works okay. But as I said before, if you like to downshift particularly quickly when you're going into a corner, then that setup was really problematic, and your wheels locked up a lot and kind of lost the rear end. Not on all tunes, not on all cars, but certainly on a car like this with such a rear weight bias towards it, with all that weight in the rear. I mean, that wouldn't go well, not at all. So yeah, I'm more user friendly now, and it's more of a what you'd expect a diff setup to be, I think. Perhaps a little bit lower than that even. Maybe you go to about, I don't know, 35% maybe. But I think my actual tunes have improved in other areas now where I can actually set my diff to a more standard setting. So that's why I've done that. It looks better. It is better. It's cool. So to sum up with this car, I would say you can use it around a lot of power tracks. It goes okay around Silverstone. I haven't tried it around Spa, but I assume it's great around Spa. I haven't actually tried it. I'm currently using a couple of different cars around Spa just to try and get them up there. But I assume it goes really well around there. Watkins Glen is particularly good round. The short tracks in particular, not the chicane ones. It does. I'm not trying it around the chicane tracks. I don't use cars like this around the chicane tracks. But if you used it around the longer or the shorter version of Watkins Glen without the back straight chicane, this thing is a pretty damn good car around those tracks. Around the longer one, not so much. You can do very good times, but people who have got specially tuned cars for those tracks, they'll probably just have a bit more than you in the corners. But around the shorter one in particular, this thing's a killer in my opinion. I think it's just pretty damn good. For other tracks, I'm not sure. Like I say, I think Road America would be good around because it's got a really good top end. I think if you notice in the stats, they said 204.6 miles an hour. I think I've never got there, but it gets to 170 something on the back straight of Road Atlanta, and that's pretty damn quick. I think it's about 172, 173. Don't quote me on that, but I know it's above 170. So yeah, it's got plenty of power, plenty of grip for a car that has no aero of any description that's been added to it. It's just got the standard aero from the standard chassis, which obviously, looking at it, is a very aerodynamic chassis. It's a mid-engined, low centre of gravity car. It's meant to be a good handling car, and for the most part it is. So with all that being said, I hope you try it, I hope you enjoy it, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do subscribe, please do like, and I will see you next time. Thank you and goodbye.